what I do is I'll tend to do my nice establishing shot, and then I'll take a little piece from.
And that's your map. That's as much of a map.
That's about as much of a map. But I had a question, like Coast City and stuff like that. When you're doing all that, especially New Frontier, what do you reference for that? Because that's an interesting thing. You just
there's a couple things being referenced there.
Because those are all made-up environments, completely, whole cloth. You know, I mean, Metropolis, everybody is New York.
It's kind of architectural stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Coast City to me it seemed like it would be a modern city, like a new city. And so it just led me to, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright, you know, and all the sort of mid-century approaches to architecture. And so that's your book.
Yeah, you find your book.
It's sort of like the city of the future, you know, at that point.
That's cool.
And yeah, you know, when you get into like Gotham, it's like that's the one that's been around for 200 years. It's falling apart. Yeah.
We can't hear you.
What's that?
Move closer to the microphones.
You can't hear me. Don't you hear me?
We've been talking forever.
That's my wife telling me to move closer to the microphone. I thought she'd get sick of hearing me.
I found him a little quiet.
Have other people had a problem?
Okay. Let's get a closer look here. Well, on the other side of that, you said sometimes you over detail, but at the same time, it is kind of nice when for people out there like that, like for instance, like Don's work, when it is a historical fact and goes in there, and this actually happened at that event, you know. So it's kind of like you find that you realize that, or you don't know it, you see it in the notes. You're like, wow, that really happened. I was there, you know. So it's kind of fun and kind of nice to see that. Not only necessary, but it's like it's kind of cool. Yeah. It's kind of cool. What made you want to like make it so historically accurate just for yourself?
Sure. I always like sort of a history buff. I don't know a lot about history, but I like historical novels, historical movies. And, like I might have been saying before, I like Karl Marx's characters, but I never tried to make Karl Marx stories. That's what offended some people. They think your stories are nothing like Karl Marx stories. Not Karl Marx. I can't make a story. Karl Marx grew up with pulp magazines and I don't know, Teddy Roosevelt. And, I grew up on a whole 50 years later, a whole different system of values and entertainment. So I can only do Don Rosa stories. Hope they entertain somebody. But why I have to make it's a lot of fun to read to write those texts because I know everybody's reading the Donald Duck comics thinking all the background facts I've just made up. Just fit any situation I want. But more and more I got into it and enjoying writing stories based on my love of history, I got really strictly set in a set of circumstances where I would not allow myself to make up any facts. You know, just be a challenge that I would be able to. Like I did a story where Scrooge McDuck beats P.T. Barnum and Buffalo Bill and Calamity Jane, but I actually had to make sure all in Geronimo, I had to actually make sure that P.T. Barnum was in Arizona at this time, and just for fun.
But it's great when you find that out. It's kind of
and it's a lot more fun if I can tell people. This is all I got.
You could just pass it through 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Only time you
New Frontier was the same way. I had to kind of template all that real history against the characters. But it was neat to see how it does line up once you start pulling these elements together. And you went, wait a minute. And you go, cool. Fantastic. And you see how, you know, it makes the story so much stronger.
The best stories, the most popular stories, and my favorite ones were when I do research and just see two sets of facts of history that I could dovetail together. And I couldn't say I invented either one. You know, I've always said there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's just new ideas or combinations of old ideas. It takes a certain, you know, it takes a certain genius to just combine old ideas.
Right.
Those are the most fun stories that I write. I just dovetail historical facts together to have some relationship to each other.
Now, you've all worked on a lot of comical characters. Are there any that you haven't that you'd love to tackle for any company? It doesn't matter what it is.
I'd love to jump on Spider-Man at some point, or something like that. So I can show everybody I can draw just muscly characters. I can draw skinny guys too.
Deadpool? You did Deadpool.
I'm just pretty beefy guy. Don't even look at that old work. It's terrible. Even when I first started drawing Superman, it was crazy. I think I figured him out in Superman and Batman, but I just drew him at 300 pounds. He was too big.
I don't in comics. Not comic characters, but Shadow. Well, Conan is fair out of me. So things like that, some old stuff. Honestly, yeah, that whole sort of super jock box, no, I think that's what I got from my kids. Archie. I'm actually talking to Archie.
Really?
Awesome.
We're trying to figure out a way for them to afford me. And that's tricky. Because it is a stretch.
Archie here, go get them. Work it out.
So we're talking about it now. I floated the idea of like the seasonal specials.
That's
Great. And I'd love to do those kids, they're dogs.
I love that song.
So we'll see what happens there. You
Kill Reggie.
That's great. Not any particular characters you think of?
No, it's, at the construction company, and the only reason I gave that up was a chance to do Uncle Scrooge, and when I got sick and tired of the Disney industry, I just didn't retire. They asked me what retire is, that when you stop working, you keep getting paid? I said, yeah, so I can retire. Stop working and stop getting paid. No, I mean, there's lots of things I love to read, but sometimes the Europeans say, well, why don't you do asterisks? You can see my art, I can't draw an asterisk. I can only draw my version of Donald Duck. It's not that, I just go home and cut the grass. No, there's some covers now and then for reprints.
So Don,
where I correct the mistakes.
let me ask you something then. Was it just your character drove you to figure out how to draw them well enough that you could just work on this thing that you love?
Well, I was telling him that I just stumbled into this. I was Gladstone Comics, you probably know, this little tiny company in North America. 3 people got the Disney license for all of North America because nobody else wanted it. And then nobody wanted to work for them because they knew there was no money in Disney Comics, but I wanted to just do one story. It didn't matter that I couldn't draw it very well. They did want to be known only as a reprint publisher, so they decided I would never been hired by the Europeans because of how bad the artwork was. But when they reprinted, they could use it. They could reprint them for free. They reprinted them, and people liked the strange stuff. And then when I had to quit working for America, well, it's a long story, but I just stumbled into it. What was the exact question?
Oh, no, I was just, it sounds like yeah, you had a whole other life. And you just had this like one character that you loved.
But I thought I knew how to do just something that I dreamt of doing literally since birth. To write and draw one Uncle Scrooge comic. I love lots of other comics. I grew up with Superman, ECs, all my sister's other comics, but nothing I love better than a good Uncle Scrooge. I prefer Will Eisner's Spirit. I think that's a better comic, but I just prefer, and ECs are the best comics ever published. And I love the Superman, Mark Weisinger's Superman, but what I really preferred was comedy adventure characters, like they have all over Europe, but in America it was only Scrooge McDuck, Karl Barks' Scrooge McDuck. And from there I just stumble after another.
So we've been talking about how everyone's taking, putting their own stamp on established characters. What about now? You created a couple characters for Scrooge comics.
Just by accident. I knew any character I created was not my property, and I might accidentally create another Uncle Scrooge, immediately. But no, that wasn't consciously the reason. I didn't want to create a character. And people would say, well, why don't you quit now? You've got a name for yourself. go and do your own comics. I wouldn't have grown up with the comic I create next week. I grew up with that whole script.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I'm interested in. And I prefer to use his characters. The characters that we're doing. To create my own character was, I don't have any affection for a character.
Oh, okay. So that's, I was curious, like, if you guys had created your own characters, or if you did, how would you feel about the
I
next
killed them
generation?
all. Every character I've ever created has died. In short. No, because I don't want, you know, whoever sticking a cyber eye on them.
That's right. I don't know about somebody else, yeah.
So, if I create a character, it's generally a street level type of character, and I murder them horribly at the end. So,
Can't murder horribly like
Right,
that.
of course.
As far as I know, the character, whatever characters Jeff has created, I figured out a little bit, haven't been used. I don't know.
yeah,
I'm not familiar with it.
I'm being like facetious. There are a couple that are still around that I cooked up, but nobody's ever.
Well, like, the first Batman I did was somebody that James Robinson wrote. There was a character called Cavalier, and James made him up and killed him at the end
Which is smart thing to do.
for that very reason.
Because, yeah, you know, the guy comes in a week later, takes it.
But you know there'll be you young Indiana Jones for the Cavalier. So if somebody really wanted to use it, or one of your guys who a week before, this is what
So I reached out to a couple creator friends who some of you guys know, just to see if they had any games or questions. And some of them are off topic, but I thought they were interesting.
Paul Pope's name isn't on that list, is it?
It is. But let me start with Jimmy Palmiotti, actually.
Oh, jeez.
Palmiotti was just curious about the digital side of things. Not really on topic, but he was curious to see how do you think digital comics are changing the way you approach your work?
Me, I'd say 100%. I'm in the middle of, you know, figuring it all out for myself right now, but I think it's really exciting. And I think there's a whole new reading experience in between an animated program and a comic book. There's now something else. And I think that the technology is exciting. The way people use it, to me, all of a sudden,
yeah, when you got a pad, suddenly you said, oh, okay, I see.
yeah, and it's like, wow, you could use this to help tell the story, to help engage the reader. There's different things you can do with this technology. You don't have to animate the thing or make it move, but the way they experience the panel-to-panel comic and what you'd be able to do with it. Like on an iPad, I can put something in a panel that's hard for you to see. And if you're curious about it, you could go in to make sure that you were right about it. So you'd see something going on that you hadn't picked up. And, you know, I don't know if you're looking at things like evil overlord Rupert Murdoch's The Daily, their iPad newspaper. But it's incredible. You know, there's an article on Egypt and there's a photo of Egypt, but it's at 360. You can go into that photo and go anywhere in Egypt. Just using your finger, you go from an overhead view, you can go right down to street level and through the entire country with this one photograph. And when you're looking at that and the way they're using it, just blew my mind. And I went, wow, there's a whole other way to tell a story buried in this. You just got to slow down.
God, it's wild. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that now. Because if it's in a daily paper, it's not like you have a team of special effects people.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
No, the technology is so-
if we had to do if we did that with, you know, street scene in Gotham City, and you begin with an outline, a view of the skyscrapers, and you go and you go down the street and you go into somebody's window. Well, how do you do that? Unless you're drawing every one of those things, you know, I mean. And yet the technology, is it, when you go into the photograph, is it like, here's another photograph, or is it like?
It zooms in.
No, it just,
It zooms in,
yeah,
like
it's-
Google Earth.
Yeah, it's like, and then you can direct where you want to go. And, you know, you start thinking about that and how you could use these things in a story. And I started thinking, you're telling a comic story. You often have characters that you love, but you don't have room in the story to explore the character as much as you want. You could have a thing like, say, where when the character first appears in the story, if you touch them, boom, another window comes up and you can read their backstory if you want. There's a little 2-page strip that explains that person.
That's actually,
If you care to read it. But it might interfere with the through line of your main story. So it's there if you want it, or it's there when you go back the second time.
Right.
So that you can experience the story without these things, but they're also there.
And the touch technology makes that possible.
I'm working on my first book now for an ebook, and there's a chase element to it with time involved. So I want it so that at any point in the story, the reader can go tap, and a big overhead map pops up to show you where the characters are, and show you how much time is left, and how much distance they have to cover, and stuff like that. That's what's exciting about it, is the way you can bring the reader into the story and get them involved in it through the actual delivery method.
Jimmy also was curious about how. What is it about you, in each of you individually, that the fans may believe they have wrong? Sure, there's plenty that Todd, you want to start us off?
It's a mystery. Tell the truth.
Todd, go ahead.
Immediately, I know what that is in Europe, because everybody thinks I'm a multi-millionaire.
That's right. People
Because it's
think
printed so
that
poorly,
is-
so widely all over the world with my name in a hardback book series, calendar. They never dream that I don't get a penny out of any of them. In their wildest dreams, I tell someone, I say, I think I'm kidding. And that's the first thing I thought when I said that. The rest of it, they know. Too many websites, all the books that I review, everything I do.
I don't know what people think.
I don't read anything on the internet. I don't go to shows.
I go to shows.
I have no idea what anybody thinks, so maybe you guys
Apparently I'm
can
not
tell me.
genius. We know that.
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. Dude, with me, there's so much. I don't even know where to start.
We did.
It's a big mess.
I did a buddy of Paul, Darwyn, Paul Cooke, some of you may know. We did a version of the Bernard Pivot questionnaire. Switched it to comics. We did it in Toronto. TCAF did it there. So it's like, if you ever seen the Actor Studio, James Lipton, he does that. What's your favorite, sound and curse word and
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Right. But these are quick and easy, sort of comic related. So you can go down the line. You can get quick answers if you want.
Poke up to it?
Oh no, no. Well, I sort of did it. He suggested I should do it here. So okay, all right. See what happens. It doesn't go well with comic. So just what is your favorite? Some of these are pretty obvious, but what is your favorite comic book or character? It's pretty obvious or not.
Discourage Marxism.
To read or?
Both. One.
Batman and draw. Spider-Man, but 1960s.
I don't know why I read so much. I probably like Hellboy to read. I like the whole environment, the atmosphere. That's fun. That's fun. And probably to draw, I like the Hellboy. They're big monster characters. I like all that stuff.
My favorite to draw is like Jonah Hex. I like the cows.
Really?
Yeah, it's like there's no rulers.
Yeah.
You don't have to use rulers. There's no skyscrapers. Favorite comic to read?
Horses.
Horses are hard.
Yes, they are.
That's a terribly dirty joke. I love it now. Right. Falls Dan DeCarlo
Just
the
us.
horses.
Dan.
Do you guys want to hear it?
I
Ready?
You're on us for
Actual
kids.
kids in
You're
the
on us.
room? Okay. This is a true story. And I hope you. Jimmy Palmiotti walks up to Dan at a show and says, I was thinking I'd get a drawing off you. And Dan said, yeah, whatever you want. And Jimmy goes, whatever I want. He goes, whatever you want. And Jimmy goes, how about a horse fucking meg? And DiCarlo pulls a piece of paper over and goes, horses are hard.
All right, what about your least favorite character or comic book, especially to draw the life of him? It's not just
Oh, yeah. Anything designed by Jim Lee. Yep, pretty much.
I didn't take a hand in it very much.
I'm not into all the little bells, ins and outs and all the stuff, you know.
Not a character, but cars. Cars and Kratz.
Oh, yeah.
I hate drawing Batman, and I love drawing Batman, but that's the thing, you know, you're doing it for 20 years, and then one day you come up against this wall, because you can't do anything but copy a drawing you've already done, because there isn't anything, and you get stuck with the guy, because...
Your eagle thing was awesome, though.
Yeah, but that's
Batman
it.
with the teeth, like, that
I
was
blew,
so awesome.
that was my whole
That was
thing, that was like 35 years of loving that character all shot off in one look. There was nothing after that.
You were nodding your head. Like, I agree with some of that.
Jim gave you my answer. Buildings.
Oh, yeah.
Backgrounds in general, it's funny, the readers never really see the backgrounds. They only see the main character. The main character is simple. It takes like 5% of the effort. The background is what takes all the effort. And it's buildings. I mean, even though I'm civil engineer education, I still hate to draw buildings.
I learned to like to draw buildings. But I'm so envious of, I'd set everything in your big box Thunderbird cars. Okay, here's a rectangle, it's flat. Yeah, that's all it ought to be. That I can do. But, you know, I remember seeing a Punisher, Ramita and Jansen. These little cars that look like a car out on the street, and you open the door, and there's a shot of what the interior looks like, and it looks just like what a Honda Civic is going to look like. You know, that would just.
Part of that too.
I'd stick on that, or you know, I'd do one of those old things. But, I'll leave that until the last.
There's a reason. There's a reason in film and in commercials that people who are going out on a drive are in a cool old car. It's because they're bigger, they're more comfortable, they look better. And maybe it's not very realistic, but yeah, you know, I can't stand drawing modern cars. I mean, what happened in North America?
Really works hard.
We own car style, you know, and now they're all like little, you know,
Plastic.
remember those the pantyhose that came in an egg? That's these little silver blue eggs shooting down the, you know, it's so boring in the car.
I didn't agree with him on cars, because when I draw a car, it has to be like late 40s or early 50s. Well, that's for one thing, I go out in my garage and look at one of my cars.
Okay. That's the thing, when you're sitting down and doing 1960 Impala, you know, that's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're sitting there having to draw a bunch of Honda Civics, yeah, that's misery.
Okay, what onomatopoeia do you love and hate? Love or two?
You gotta explain.
One love, one hate.
Yeah, you know what?
It's the sound.
Words that sound like, the sound effects that sound like.
Right.
Give you another phone.
Well, even a stretch of that, say sound effect in a comic, like, you know,
Oh, bland.
yeah, things like that. Bland.
Right.
Okay.
Surely it would be a Don Martin sound effect.
Snick is funny. I like Snick. Bam is another good one.
Yeah.
Snick and Bam. Those two words, that's two characters right there.
Marx would be glom.
One for wet.
Glob.
Whip. I like the whip. There was a Stanleyism that was split a can. I couldn't figure out. But I just wanted to say, I had a period where I would read these things out loud. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, it is. It's like,
What?
What I love is my friend Jay Stevens who's really made a name for himself with kid shows in animation. He used to have a comic called Jack Cat. And she was a little girl superhero. And whenever she'd throw a punch, the sound effect would say, punch.
I see that, exactly.
And everything, it was the verb that described the action, it was the sound effect, and yeah, it worked really well.
So what would be your favorite catchphrase in comic books? Be it superhero, be it, or not?
Yeah, like it's clover.
Clover, fine.
I understand, I'm sad.
My face is tiger.
Yeah.
It's entirely for the check.
Great Scott.
It's got
A great howling crash wagon.
That's
That's an exclamation.
I like this clover.
That is good. Yeah, it's one of my favorite chapters.
Always thinking hard.
Really think,
Yeah.
Nutty Gizmo. I love that phrase.
Nutty Gizmo.
Stan Lee wrote that phrase like 3 times in every Fantastic Four.
Oh, the thing you're talking about.
When it reads
Stretcho,
Nutty
what the? Get it back from there, you blame digit. That thing's coming up for you. Blame digit.
The stuff, that dialogue is unbelievable. It is. He's hurling that old desk as if it was made of tissue paper. You're in the middle of a fight, dude.
So finally on this questionnaire here, if heaven exists, and when you get there, what would you like to hear Jack Kirby sing?
Gosh.
Well done, couldn't feel so good.
Nice try.
I actually met him. And
Oh.
He said something similar to what I asked him to be. Jeff and I had just done a book called Challenge. And we had changed everything because we knew nothing about we had no editor really. We knew nothing about the original character. And we were just sort of I described it as throwing a lot of shit at the wall and see if anything sticks with that.
I'd say that's accurate.
And yeah, for better or for worse, and so was it. And but we got a lot of within the industry. We got a lot of, and I had no idea. Jeff had to tell me because I was.
And these were Jack's characters.
Right. And we met him at San Diego. Still when it was in the old place, it was college. He's walking around. And Jim
Hands up to his arm.
absolutely. And he's this tall,
Green cigar.
and I aspire to it.
Exactly. Just waiting for the day. Hands up there.
And we give him a cup of meat, and he didn't look at it, but he was very gracious, and he said, I hope people, he saw the title, and he said, I hope you boys just did what you want. As though he'd been coached with, right? And, because he knew his legacy had, one of the things that it had done was to make editors say, do it like Kirby. And he probably assumed that we've seen a lot of his, which we had, a lot of his challenges. So he said,
It's really cool. He was, I think, the master of saying the perfect thing. You know, apparently, it didn't matter what the person said to him when they came up to the table. Like they say, I just read this book, and it's pretty clear to me that what they're trying to say is this. Isn't that what it meant? And Jack would always say, absolutely. And he was right, because the reader's perception, what the reader took away from the story, you can't say it's wrong. It's their perception of the story. So it was valid. So it didn't matter what anybody thought of his work. He told them that it was absolutely right, because
and I could see you being retarded. Although you have a lot of, one of the things when we started to know each other, one of the things I learned about you is himself every decade, 4 decades.
Unbelievable. Never took a drug and was like, look at that Fantastic Four stuff, like from 55 came on.
The negatives on?
All of it, yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah, his cat's clearly on something strong, you know, and it's like, no, it's hard to believe.
Pure imagination.
Just pull it in, just-
Don, maybe not Kirby for you, but maybe Mark. So it's
No, I was
like-
trying to figure out an answer to
Yeah.
that because, I mean, I'm a great admirer of Jack Kirby's work in the 50s and 60s, but as far as professionally,
Yeah.
you know, I met him and I expect, what I'd like to hear from him to say is, oh, Mr. Mark's right over there.
That's great. That's great.
Well, I like him. Mark's what would you like him?
We're not gonna know.
That's all right. That's okay. We want to open up to, if it's okay with the gentleman here, for a few questions from the audience. You guys, anybody have any? Don't be scared. Don't want to give you a decent chicken for every question.
I have a question. So when you, at the very beginning, you were talking about looking at the character as the original creator created it. There are certain characters that, you know, kind of are the butt of jokes and always have been. Like, one of my favorite characters is Aquaman. You know, people either love Aquaman or he's the butt of the DC universe. And that's one of the characters that, over time, I think people have made fun of the actual strengths and powers and that kind of thing. Is that something that you would look at and say, you know, maybe we do need to tweak this here or there or create, I mean, people have done it over time, but, you know, just because the nature of the character, because there's certain characters that are like that, you know, they're always going to be the joke or,
I don't know what to say about that.